Okay, so Sarah, I'll pass the mic to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. Hey, everyone. My name is Sarah Shore, and I'm delighted to talk to you today about qualitative research and, importantly, how you might be able to do it on a startup budget. I'm going to go through a little bit of a quick overview of who I am, very brief. Then just before we start getting into the details around qualitative, just to talk a little bit about research, since not everyone may have a research background. I think the idea of research can sometimes be either a little confusing or have some, some predetermined ideas about what it is. So we'll set the stage around that. Then we'll start talking about different types of qualitative research and then how you go about doing it. I'm going to go speedily, but I have the Q&A and the chat open. So if you have any questions or have anything, we can go from there. So just a very, very quick introduction to me. So I am the principal of Shore Insights and Strategy. I do, not surprisingly, insights and strategy work. And since my background is both brand strategy and consumer insights, that's the value that I bring to my client of really doing insights with a very strategic perspective and doing strategy from a very insight-based perspective. I do insights and strategy. So I do qualitative and I also do quantitative. I do moderator training. And then from the strategy perspective, all of the good strategy stuff. But today we are going to talk mostly about qualitative. And just to let you know who I am, my background is, I guess I'm 5 years now. I didn't update that. I was at a company called Sterling Brands for 16 years. And before that, I worked in CPG at Nabisco Foods and then in advertising. And then as far as categories, I've had, worked on categories, across industries, but a pretty strong focus on consumer goods, both beverages and food. So that's it on me. Just let's have a quickish discussion about research. So you may or may not know this, but there's qualitative and there's quantitative. So qualitative is when we think more about open-ended, getting rich detail, really digging into the why. You tend to have smaller sample sizes, and some of those examples might be focus groups, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, one-on-one interviews, ethnographies, for example, when you take people shopping or you go into people's homes, and certainly online boards. Online qualitative, has been around for a long time. Obviously, during the pandemic, it became a huge deal. And I always recommend qualitative when you want ideas and insight, when you want anecdotes and target quotes, and real rich understanding. You would not do qualitative if you're looking to validate flavors, for example, or get data around what % of people are interested in your product. But if that's what you want to do, then quantitative is your way to go, which is much more closed-ended. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about X, Y, or Z? It's used to test. You have much larger sample sizes. A survey is a good example. SurveyMonkey, I'm sure a lot of people have experience with that. It's best for proof of concept, if you want to rank flavors. It's also great if you need to create sales or investor decks, if you want to validate your idea, if you want to validate the consumer need that drives your idea. But it's really not very good for getting feedback that's really rich, actionable feedback or knowing more about whys. So today is qualitative, and what I have found is when people say, I want to do qualitative, they're like, I want to do some focus groups. And that's all well and good, but focus groups is just one bit of what qualitative is. So, you've got in-person qualitative, and that can be a focus group, which is sort of getting a bunch of people around a table to talk about something, or IDI, sort of one-on-one interviews or interview with two, we call dyads. Ethnography is great if you need to be in someone's home. I can give you lots of examples about when you would want to be at home. What I say blank alongs, so shop alongs. I've done beach alongs. I have done drive-through alongs, and then just general observation. I mean, I stood in a Nike store for 3 days to watch the way people shop. And then there's online qualitative. You can do online groups. You can do online IDIs, just like a Zoom call. Bulletin boards, that is my favorite. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Diaries, where you have people record what they're doing on a somewhat longitudinal basis, and then mobile. So the question is, how do you choose? First, the question is, do you want to do in-person or online? In-person is most valuable if you want to show or try product. I mean, obviously, if you want somebody to try your beverage or your bar or your snack, you need to be in person. If there's a strong reason to be in home. So for example, I was working with a startup that was creating like this immunity powder for children. And we wanted to watch the process for how moms feed their babies. So we actually had to go home and understand what that process looked like. And then co-creation, you know, if you're like, oh, I need some help putting the dots on and the crossing the T's, and you want to hear from some of your customers, it's a good time. It's a good time to do it. But listen, the challenges are real. It's expensive. You know, unless you're doing a bunch of your friends in your house, it's expensive. It is pretty inefficient because you can't talk to that many people. And then it's geographically limiting, right? And especially, you know, if you're in a New York City or a San Francisco or a Los Angeles, and you want to talk to sort of people in the middle of America, it's not super amazing just to talk to a bunch of people in your town. Online qualitative is amazing. It's incredibly efficient. You can get nice geographic diversity and you can get through a lot of content. But like all things, there's also challenges. You can miss real human connection. There is something really valuable about looking somebody in the eyes and seeing how they respond. You know, someone saying this tastes delicious versus watching their face when they try something, it's really different. So my opinion, which is not I think the truth, but online focus groups. So imagine you have 4 or 5 people on a Zoom. They're not always awesome. They're fine, but they, you know, you kind of get the worst of the online dynamic and you get the worst of the sort of group think dynamic and people talking over, but they are worthwhile. And it is sometimes harder to get a why if you're doing like an online bulletin board because it's an asynchronous methodology. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So you've decided online, guys, I'm just blasting through this because I think it's really important context for the how. So we just talked about the in-persons. So the real life example, I was doing a project for this new type of avocado. I needed people to taste them. We did it in person. IDIs, I was doing research for a pharma company. I wanted to talk to people about what it was like to live with diabetes and see the sort of, you know, the foods they had in their home and the medicines they took. Being in home is key. And ethnography is great, being in a real life environment. And this is what I was talking about, meeting moms in their homes to watch them feed their babies their first foods. And online, just give you some examples. So online focus groups, I was showing designs for a new sparkling water. That was great to have. It's much easier to do design assessment, you know, with a sort of a synchronous conversation. Online bulletin boards, I mean, so many ways to use this. You know, getting clarity on what health and wellness means in the sweet treat and exposing respondents to product ideas. Mobile, you know, what energy drink do people use in different occasions? The one thing I'm going to say about mobile is, you know, everyone in the research industry is all excited about the use of mobile. I will tell you, if you're doing qualitative, which is what we're talking about today, you're really looking for insight and you're looking for whys. And if you just think about the way you talk when you're texting versus the way you talk when you're typing versus the way you talk when you're one-on-one with person, with mobile, it's super hard to get depth of understanding. So I've mentioned an online bulletin board. I thought I would show you an example of this. The online bulletin boards are my go-to. I happen to like the Recollective platform, but there are plenty of others out there. There's Qualboard out there. There's AHA out there. There's a lot of them. But what I like about them is everyone gets to talk. So this was some products. You can see I showed some packaging here. I had people talk about sort of what snacks are in the household. I asked people, we had sent people a treat and we asked them to try them and why and how. So lots of options. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. That is the context for this conversation. Now I'm going to get into the how of pulling this off. Does anyone have any questions? I have the Q&A open. I also have the webinar chat open. So if anyone has any questions right now, feel free to send them on. I'll just wait for a beat. So yes, you will be able to access these slides after the presentation. And Denise, I don't really know what call center type data is. So please send that on a little bit more information. What is the time to prepare? Let me get to the time frame in a second. I'll get to the time frame of how this goes. Denise, feel free to send them more information. I'm not sure what call center type data is, but if we're talking about data, customers contact, sure, yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't call that call center data, but one thing that I do a lot with my clients is I blast their databases. So I haven't done anything where, like, for example, yeah, I guess I wouldn't call it call center, but yes, I blast client databases all the time. And it's a super cheap and cheerful way to do it. Does that help? If I want to get consumer through survey to see if there's a market and nail down persona, would that be quantitative? Oh, Natalie, that's a really interesting point of view. So Natalie is asking if she wants to get consumer insight through survey to see if there's market and nail down persona, would that be quantitative? John, it'll be everything will be presented later. So Natalie, I like quantitative to understand who the people are who are going to be most likely to want your product. If you say, hey, I created this bar. So I'll tell you, I'm working with a product right now. It's an apparel product. And they know that older people are using it. They know that kids are using it. They know that moms are using it. We are currently doing quantitative to understand which audience is most likely to pay for it, to which audience it provides the most benefits, and then to understand by audience how they see the benefits and how they see the value. If you want to talk about persona, though, I think qualitative is really helpful for persona, because qualitative, you get to know these people as people rather than data points. Denise, I'll get back to you in a second. Black to reject. Okay. William, I mean, are all options created equally? Opinions created equally? It's a great question. I mean, listen, my point of view, especially on qualitative, is a third of your respondents are going to be amazing. A third of your respondents are going to be fine. And a third of your respondents are going to kind of suck. So what I tend to do when I'm doing qualitative is, like, let's say you're doing an online bulletin board with 25 people. You're going to be like, these two people kind of don't know what they're talking about. They're lying. They shouldn't even be here. These two people are just sort of morons and are doing this just to get the money. Hey, these people really seem, based on what I see, they really seem to match the audience that I care about. And so I'm going to pay a lot of attention to them. And then, but you never want to pay attention to one opinion, right? You want to be looking across opinions. You're always looking for patterns. It's lovely to have, oh, this one person said this, but that's not the way to do insight. That's a great way to say, okay, I want to take this person's quote because they're super archetypal of what I've heard, but you really need to be looking across database. Anna, you know, UX research is not to find a job abroad. You know what, I can't really help you, but I would recommend looking at Upwork. Upwork is a great place for people to hire freelancers. Denise, black databases. I don't really know what black databases is. Perhaps I might be able to answer this offline. I'm not saying black databases, I'm saying blast databases. So I'll put together a quantitative survey, for example, and we'll get into this in just a moment. I'll put together a quantitative survey I have a Qualtrics platform, which is like SurveyMonkey. It's a little bit more sort of sophisticated. I'm a big fan of it. It's super easy to use, and technology is not my strong point. So I like something that's super idiot proof. But I'll put together, let's call it a 5-minute survey. So I worked on launching a pair of compression socks, for example, and I'm going to give you a compression socks example. And it was a super cheap and cheerful project. It was a startup, and they're doing really well. They have about $3 million in sales. And so the client has come back and says, I don't know who's buying my product, and I don't know why they're buying it, for what reasons. So I've put together about a 5-minute survey, and they're going to send it out first to about 10,000 people in their database. We'll see what sort of response we get, and then we'll get another 10,000 database. So I never see the personal data. Because I am not getting the clients' names, I'm blasting it to the clients. They have the right to the respondents, to the customers. So I never see PII ever. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. I will continue to ask questions. I will continue to answer questions. Okay, so doing it yourself. So obviously when you have a lot more money, Anonymous attendee, let me get through this and I'll answer your question about qual and quant to guide new product development. Let me get into this and then I'll talk to you a little bit more. But keep them going. Keep them going. So, you know, obviously when you have more budget, you might hire somebody. You might hire a big agency. You might hire someone like me who has a lot of experience, but I'm a sole proprietor, or you might hire somebody who's super junior. But for now, I'm assuming that you guys are going to be on shoestring budgets and you're going to try and do it yourself. So let's talk about your methodology. So you want to do online, you want to do one-on-one interviews, you want to do focus groups, but you need people. All right. There are, I think there might be more, but these are the 4 ways that I think you can do it. So friends and friends of your friends, listen, this is the cheapest way to go. It is the freest way to go. You know, your friends may do this just because you buy them pizza and beer, or you give everybody a $25 gift card to Amazon or whatever it is. My only point for you is if your friends and your friends of friends don't mirror your audience, do not use them. You will get useless information. If your audience is 45 plus and your friends are all in their 20s, you don't want to talk to them. If you think that this is going to be an option for, you know, super affluent people and your friends are not, don't use them. But friends of friends, so I was working with a startup that was launching a cannabis drink. Their friends are people who would live in the Bay Area. They are friends that you have to live in the Bay Area. So they did something at home. Do you have incentivized people? I mean, not that many people are going to give you their time for free. I mean, that's just sort of the truth of the world. Sometimes you can do a chance to win, but if you're asking for somebody who doesn't know you for an hour, your friends and your friends of probably will do it for free. In general, people don't spend an hour with you for free. So that's about incentives. This is a nice way to do it, a friends of survey. Okay, I'll get to that question in a moment. Let me get through this, but keep sending the questions on. I'm good. So friends of survey or database survey. So I've done this a few times. So I have a friend who was coming up with some new sort of car technology. And he wanted to do some focus groups. So what I did is I put together a little recruiting survey, and you could do this with the SurveyMonkey, where all I wanted was questions of like, what is your age? What is your gender? Where do you live? How much what brand of car do you drive? How interested are you in these factors? Because this was a super premium product. And then, hey, I might be doing some research. Would you be interested in participating? That is a real cheap and cheerful way to find people. And then you call them and you confirm them and they participate. You can also post it on social media. One thing I will tell you, if you post something on social media and you say, I'm going to pay you, you are going to get a gazillion scammers, which I did badly. So you might say, hey, do you have 3 minutes to answer a few questions? I did this when I did my compression socks project. I said, hey, I'm going to be doing some research. Take this survey if you're interested. And I had a whole bunch of people take it. And then I choose the people that I want. How do I choose the people? I choose the people based on what is the age range I'm looking for? What are the attitudes I'm looking for? What are the other demographics? Am I looking for moms or am I looking for singles? Am I looking for people who exercise frequently or don't? You choose. All right. You can also do that. This is the example. You can also do it if you have, let's say you have 10,000 people in your database. I do this all the time with my clients where I do a little survey and I say, hey, brand X is going to be conducting some paid survey. If you're interested in participating, can you answer these questions? The only questions that you're going to put in this are questions you need to determine, do I want to include these people in my survey? Age, gender, if you care about affluence, if you care about ethnicity, if you care about presence of children, if you care about geography, and then some of those attitudinal behaviors, which of the following products have you used? Sparkling water, energy drink, coconut water. And then that's how you would use that. And then you get the data from your SurveyMonkey or from your Qualtrics or whatever you have. And then you choose these people manually, you call them and you confirm them for whatever research you're doing. There are also a bunch of companies, and I'm going to tell you, I don't know a ton about them because I tend not to use them with my clients because my clients, My clients tend to want very specific people, but there's a company called Respondent.io. I'm sure if you Google Respondent.io, you'll get a million other ads for these are people who are just cheap and cheerful ways to recruit folks. You can't be terribly specific. You can be slightly specific. And then real recruiters. And at the end of the day, these are going to be really expensive. You're going to be paying $175 just to recruit a human, and then, $125, $150 to incentivize them. You're talking about $300 per. This is getting into big money. Okay. I see the questions coming in, just so you guys know I'm coming through. So this is what I said is a Friends of Recruiting. It was a new compression socks, compression socks brand. I posted on social media and I emailed it to friends and family. And then I chose the people and invited them to participate in the bulletin board. Yes, Natalie, it's coming up. Okay, so that's how you get your people. Okay, so here's your guide, Natalie. I think this is what you were asking about. So the way that you do this, okay, survey is quantitative, discussion guide is qualitative. So I'm going to use the word survey for now. And this is sort of the overview of how you write a survey, right? You want to start with, and I know you're going to be dying to ask them whether or not they want real sugar or artificial sugar in this thing. You gotta sort of go into this. So introduce yourself, informations, establish human connection, let them see you as a human being. Then a broad overview talk. So let's just say, let's say it's compressed. Oh, well, you guys are CPG. Let's say it's a new coconut, like flavored coconut waters is going to be our brand, right? Or I'll take Williams, functional RTD beverage. Okay. So functional and RTD beverage, talk to me a little bit about the drinks that the beverages that you have in your life. Okay. When do you drink them? When do you not? To what degree is it important to you that your beverage does, do you ever use beverages that do something? Give me some examples. Have you heard of brands like that are, these functional beverages? Have you tried any of them? Why, when, how? And now you get into, hey, I'd like to introduce you our, brand X functional RTD beverage. This is what it does. These are the benefits. What are your perspectives? What are your questions? What benefits? What do you like? What do you not like? And that's when your real aided questions come. Let's say you want to know about flavors, right? What flavors would you expect from it? Rule of thumb always for me, always start aided. Always start unaided. What flavors would you like? Don't give them examples. What flavors would you like? Okay, they say, I want vanilla, I want chocolate, I want raspberry. Okay, talk to me a little bit more about, it's interesting. I've heard, flavors that are more dessert-like versus flavor that are more natural-like. Talk to me about how you think about the two is different. And then okay, listen, I have vanilla chai, I have raspberry cream, I have coconut cinnamon. Who the hell knows what these are, right? Which of these are you interested in? So you guys see what I talked about, very unaided, then sort of take what they say and keep it unaided, and then specifically ask your questions, and then a wrap up. That is sort of a general flow of how to write a qualitative, a general focus of how to write a qualitative guide. There's a lot of method to this madness. There's a lot of art and science. I've been doing this for 20 years. Just here's some rules of thumbs. So I have 2 rules when it comes to doing qualitative research. What do I mean by aided? Good question. Unaided is, tell me, unaided is when you're feeding your kids in the morning, tell me how you go about choosing what they're going to have. That's unaided. When it comes to aided is, hey, when you're deciding to feed your kids in your morning, how do you decide between pancakes, cereal, and eggs? That's what I mean by aided versus unaided. Jordan, in terms of keeping a survey succinct, again, I want to remind us that we are talking about qualitative here. If you have a respondent that they've committed 15 minutes to you, you write a 15-minute survey. But the truth of this flow has to be the same. You got to take a breath. You got to sort of create context. You got to create them seeing you as a human being that they can engage with. People aren't going to want to tell you their deepest, darkest secrets if they don't see you as a human being that they connect with. So if you have have people commit to a 15-minute Zoom, you write a 15-minute guide. If people commit to an hour, you write an hour guide. I think that's, you always want to be thoughtful, but I think the flow is the same no matter what you do. Okay, moving on. So, right, how do you ask people questions? Again, we're on qualitative, but quite honestly, this works for quantitative as well. And, and if you guys want to hear more about quantitative, I can certainly do a quantitative one. But qualitative is, so I have two rules when it comes to doing qualitative research. Ask good questions well, and be a superb listener. Here's some rules of thumb about asking questions well. Use open-ended questions, right? Here's one. I've done a lot of work with Anheuser-Busch in the world. Tell me about how you think about pairing beer with food. Versus, do you pair beer with food? Do you feed your kids sugar in the morning? Versus, talk to me about how you think about sugar when it comes to breakfast. That's unaided. Yes, if you ask people a yes/no question, you're going to get a yes/no answer. Yes/no answer, not helpful for you. Ask one question at a time. Oh my gosh, if your first question doesn't do a good job, think about coming up with a new question. Okay, so do you drink, do you drink wine? Do you drink beer? How do you choose between the two? Do you drink wine? Tell me more about wine. Okay, now do you drink beer? Tell me about the type of beer you drink. Okay, you said you drank wine and beer. When do you choose those? See what I mean? One question at a time. Be creative. I mean, this is hard. This is something you'll get to use over time. My favorite question is, so I was working on a project. I mean, I've been doing a lot of stuff, but like, my favorite thing, feel free to steal this, is Zoe from Mars. Zoe, explain to me. So I'm doing a project currently for a big herbal tea brand. And the clients have some perspectives about what an herbal tea is and how people relate to herbal tea. So I had these people, Zoe just arrived from Earth. She wants to understand what actually herbal tea is. What is herbal tea? And why would one drink it? So much more interesting than saying, how do you describe what herbal tea is? Boring. Tell Zoe from Mars, the Martian who's never been on Earth, to describe herbal tea. All right. Be curious and uninformed. Ask the dumb questions. I know from doing a gazillion beer focus groups, I know why people choose bottle over can. But you know what? If the client still cares about that, or if it's still important for you to understand it, why would someone drink from a can versus a bottle? Ask the dumb questions. No client, no consumer cares as much about your RTD functional beverage, about your electrolyte, about your organic snacks. No one cares. They don't care it and they don't understand it. They don't live it like you do. Ask the dumb questions. Never assume. Start unaided. That point about like, what do you give your child for breakfast? Do you give them cereal, pancakes? People are not idiots. If you ask the question, if people don't understand it, ask the question again. Do not give people answers. Avoid insider language. I'm doing a product actually with a large startup that's doing a new type of footwear. And the words that they're using, like casual sport, it's like people don't use these words. Don't use your language, use people language. Talk to people in humanese. And then don't expect people to give you your answer. Every time a client says to me, will you ask them if they want this? And I'm like, sure, but please don't believe them. Consumers are very, very good at being consumers. They are very bad at being strategists. They are very bad at being new product managers. They are very good at being people who drink coconut water, who eat granola bars. All right. So just a few more examples, just so you can see them. Telling you about the experience of feeding a toddler, one question about a time. Here's Zoe. Be curious and uninformed. We know why people want protein, but why do I, and then just start unaided. I'm sure you guys are going to have 3 different I did a cannabis beverage, 3 different packaging. The founders couldn't make a decision, so we threw it out to consumers. What does this tell you about what's in the can? Versus, does this tell you that this is going to be refreshing? Real different. Be a superb listener. This is good for life. It's also really good for research. Listen to what they are saying, and importantly, to what they're not saying. It is very likely that you put an ingredient in your product that you thought was the most brilliant thing in the world, and nobody's talking about the MCT oil. No one thinks the MCT oil is interesting. Listen for that. Then after they've said it, you can say later, you can say, hey, it's interesting no one's talking about MCT oil. Tell me why that is. Listen for contradictions. People are going to tell you contradictions all the time. They're going to love one thing, they're going to love another thing. Pay attention to what they said when they introduce themselves, to how they're responding. And you could say, hey, that's really interesting, Jennifer. You mentioned that you're always looking for new products to help your skin. Yet now you're saying, you're looking at this product and you're saying, oh, I'm really happy with my Olay. Tell me about that. Because the issue is they probably don't like your product. You got to listen. Listen for patterns rather than individual responses. I don't care what Jennifer said or what Pete said or what Chloe said. I care about what you heard across talking to all the people. To that point, listen for strongly held beliefs. What I mean by that is research is sort of an unnatural experience. Someone's probably going to bullshit you because they're trying to be nice. People in general want to be nice, especially if they know they're doing a favor for a friend. Listen for strongly held beliefs. Do they really believe that? And you can say to someone, if someone says, yeah, I'd buy that, you could say, listen, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm not feeling a lot of big energy on that. Do you really want to buy this? It's okay. Tell it to me straight. And awesome. I got through that in 35 minutes. So, throw my questions down. Throw your questions down. I'm going to start looking through the questions now. So do I always have to incentivize people? I am building a predictive model based on SMEs' opinions of who they think is the best NBA player of all time and why. Was looking to use players' psychographics as data. William, I'm not sure I really understand what that question is, but if what I hear you saying, it's one thing you can do, and this would probably be more quantitative, is, which of the following attributes best describe LeBron James? Which of the following best describe Michael Jordan? Which of the following best describe, Steph Curry, et cetera, et cetera? That would be more quantitative, and ways you can do this. Again, this is more quantitative. You can have them choose. You can have them choose the top three. You can have them, just so you know, if you ever do quantitative, consumers hate matrix scales, or respondents hate matrix scales. A matrix scale is like if you have a bunch of questions or a bunch of attributes down one side and you have strongly agree, somewhat agree, don't agree or don't not agree, which I think is kind of bullshit. Somewhat disagree, strongly disagree. I think people hate those. You can do agree, don't agree, Steph Curry. Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. So you can get some quantitative data around their attributes, if that's what I think you're saying. Let me know if I didn't answer that well. So what qualitative and quantitative data would you collect to guide new product development and go-to-market strategy? Well, product development, product development is qual and quant. And let me talk a little bit about that. Because there's always a question of, do you do qualitative first and do you do quantitative first? And I think it depends on what you know and what you think already. If you've worked with your flavor, your flavor house, and you've been watching all your competition and you've come up with 8 flavors and you can only launch 3, then you do quant. That's super easy quantitative. If you have a bunch of different package options, but you're not really sure which would be best for consumers, that's qual, because you want consumers to touch it. Or if you're hey, I know I want to create this bar because I think there's this problem in the marketplace that people aren't getting enough vitamin C. And I want to talk to people about sort of what are the different formats that they would use it. That's probably qualitative. So again, qualitative, I think, will help you create and optimize. Ooh, this is smart. Let me say it this way. Qualitative will help you create and optimize. Quantitative will help you validate and decide. That hopefully is helpful. I think that's probably a good way to think about which one to use. So Jordan, is the answer choice options people don't like about matrix options, or the fact that multiple? Oh, no, it's just because it's just, keep in mind, a lot of people do surveys on their phones and it's just constant. Imagine you have 10 attributes and people have to make 5 choices, you know, pick between 5. I mean, you guys have taken quantitative surveys. I mean, how annoying is it when, how much do you agree with your current experience with United? It was friendly. I strongly do agree. It's just annoying. It's just annoying. So I think in general, researchers put too many options in general. And I think that a 5-point scale is stupid. I mean, who somewhat disagrees with something? I quite honestly, with a lot of my clients, now granted, if you need data for an investor presentation or sales presentation, Whole Foods and Sprouts of the world, they tend to like, and this is quantitative, so a little bit off topic, like a Sprouts or a Whole Foods, for example, tends to like a top 2 box. Top 2 box is on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is extremely likely to buy, extremely appealing, and 1 is not appealing, not likely to be at all. That's your 4, 4, and 5. That's usually the number you need to bring to a Sprouts for a sales presentation. That's what you need to bring to an investor presentation. But if this is just to provide you some guidance, I think you can do a yes, no, or one thing I really like for example, for flavor is like a lot, like love, like a lot, love, like, and dislike. And the thing is, I'm not launching a flavor that people like, right? If I have 8 flavors, I want the ones that they love. I want the ones that people are going to have a really, really strong positive point of view about. Okay, so I've got a bunch of questions coming in. Let me come up. Okay, thank you. Would you ever go off script? Always, Michael. Always go off script. So off script, just being sure. I mean, because again, if you're moderating, you know what you need to learn, right? So if someone says something like, whoa, that's really interesting. So someone says, you know, I never, you know, pair food with drinks. And then you're like, oh, that's interesting. You know, it's funny. I've talked to a lot of people who, like, when they're having Mexican food, they'll buy a Corona and they'll be like, oh yeah, I do that. And so then you might want to say, okay, good, great. Let's talk about some other options. Or, hey, that's interesting. You know, what else, you know, what other booze might you pair with Mexican food, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, always go off script, always go off flow. If something gives you a big juicy aha, go after it. Do you have any tips on how to share synthesized data? So Jessica, I'm going to keep this focused on qualitative because we could go for hours on quantitative. But yeah, I like taking notes. You'll take notes. If you do an online bulletin board with like a recollective, and just so you guys know, the recollective, it'll be about $1,900 or $1,800. That's with them doing the programming. If you want to save some, you can do the programming yourself. I find that, you know, I imagine that it would be better use of your time to spend a few $100 to have them program. You get a transcript. And the key thing is go through your qualitative. What am I hearing? What is it telling me about my brand? So what am I hearing? Like, what am I hearing? What does it tell me? Like, what is the juicy insight, right? There's the observation. Oh yeah, okay, well, people buy 5 different types of cereal. And then there's the insight, like, oh, people choose the cereal based on how they're feeling about their weight that day, for example, right? So you want to do observations and insights, and then all of it doesn't matter unless you're like, well, what does it mean for me? You should, and people are like, what's the so what? Who cares about what's the so what? That's such like boring. But what does that mean for my strategic questions? You should always approach research, whether it's qual or quantitative, not on the questions you want to answer. The questions you want to answer are just a tool in what are your strategic and business questions. Oh, what's the biggest challenge, Sophie? Oh, where do we go? So I'm going to go with qualitative. The biggest challenge, I think, is that, you know, people don't always tell the truth. So you just have to moderate the hell out of them. You have to go for those strongly held beliefs, and it's hard. Quantitative, and again, this isn't quantitative. The biggest problem with quantitative is sample quality. And I'll give a 30-second rant on sample quality. Sample quality is really, really sucky these days. One big issue is like SurveyMonkey will give you really cheap sample. It's crap sample. Don't use it. Like if you're paying $1 a person, it's crappy sample. It's what's called river sample. And what happens is people just take surveys over and over because they accrue points and their points have value. There's a lot of ways to value survey. First of all, go to a real survey provider. I personally go direct to a panel. I like 𝐕𝐢𝐝. Chris Young is my guy there. 𝐕𝐢𝐝 is a sample provider. And then you have to clean the data. What I mean by, and so I pay money for 𝐕𝐢𝐴 to clean the data, or I do it myself. Cleaning the data, what do I mean by that? If you know you wrote a 6-minute survey and somebody's finishing in 2, they didn't read your stuff. If you look and people have straight lined, meaning they like everything a lot, they didn't care. I always put in a verbatim, an easy verbatim. And if people write stupid stuff, or I don't know, or NA, they don't care. So quant is sample quality. Qual, I think, is just getting what you want, because consumers sometimes can't answer your questions. How do you have enough data? Okay, for qual, qual insights, I would say you have enough people when you're seeing patterns. I would never talk to fewer than 8 people. I mean, you want more, but I'm again thinking in startup terms. With quantitative, I like 125 as my sample. I never use a 1 to 9 scale. The only scales I use sometimes my fake 2 or 3 point scales. 5-point scale is standard. Some people use a 7-point scale. I think they're dumb, because how many versions of agree or appeal do you like? And then NPS score, a standard NPS score is 0 to 10. Do you write up qualitative as fact or observation? You write it up as insight, Jessica. So there are, hey, I went to this person's home and they had 10 types of cereal. That is your factual observation. People, told me when I did this research that they buy, they almost always buy black cherry. Sometimes they'll get blood orange sparkling water, but it's the juicy bits about the whys and then what it means about them and their needs that you're writing up from an insight perspective. Do you have any good ways to find out why people didn't buy a product from our website? No. I think you need to look at your analytics. If you are capturing if people are registering and didn't buy, you could always blast the database of people who registered and didn't buy. But no, sorry, I don't have a really good way to do that. Best survey analysis software tool. So again, I think we're talking about quantitative here. I like Qualtrics. A lot of people also like Decipher. There's another one, Alchemer or something. I like Qualtrics. Qualtrics isn't terribly friendly to the small companies, I can tell you, but it's not terribly expensive. What is your go-to qualitative prompt to get the juiciest data? Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more about that. That's always the juiciest one. That's also the juiciest one. Or, oh, that's interesting that tell me more is always the best one. Or tell me what that looks like in your life. People will be like, yeah, wellness is really important to me. Great. Tell me what a day in a wellness, actually literally just did this like 2 days ago. Tell me about a day in your wellness life. Start from when you wake up to when you go to sleep. What do you do? What are the products you use? What are the brands you use? Why do you use them? What does it mean? What does wellness mean to you? So, tell me more. Do you need software? Well, for qualitative, the one that I use, Recollective, it's a license. So you buy their license for one-offs and, it's a certain price. So you can just call Recollective directly. I'm sure there are cheaper ways to do it. I mean, hell, you could send out an email if you're doing it to friends. I imagine Google surveys would also work as well. If you have people, but it has to be open-ended. Do you ask? Yes, Brent. Yes, absolutely. I'm a big believer in ask every question 3 different ways. So for example, let's imagine that you're trying to come up with your positioning strategy. So what is it that your brand stands for? You might show them a statement. You might show them, or let's say you say, listen, I think that this is my key point of differentiation, right? This is why my bar is better than everyone else's. You may want to test that point of difference in multiple different ways, perhaps via product concept, perhaps via, I've been doing faux Facebook ads where, you know, because people interact with products like so via social media now, that like, I'll create just using PowerPoint, like a little rectangle. I'll get like a visual from the internet, like an image. And then like, let's say you think your big point of difference is the most MCT oil around, right? You know, more MCT oil than other beverages, for example. Or, you know, another one is MCT oil equals good health, you know, but like, and to get people's perspective on, so ask the same question in different ways using different methodologies. No weird questions. Oh yeah, maybe a weird question, but could you give us an example of the tone you trying to make sure a question is not a leading question? You know, the leading, just not a leading question, like tone is helpful, but I think it's about what you don't say, like, don't you think blah, 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 that's leading, right? You know, tell me about, I think it's always like, okay, actually, I have a good question for you, Jordan. Your tone of voice is about curiosity. It's about respect and curiosity. I have this when I do moderator training, which is sort of one of the products I provide. I always say that doing research is like Buddhism. Have compassion. Really understand where these people are coming from. Be grateful for their thoughts. Be grateful for their thoughts. Be grateful for their time. Be present, really listening to what they're saying, really pay attention. And I think and also be really curious. And at the end of the day, this is all about curiosity. This is all about curiosity. When you run ads, would you run ads to get people to participate? Natalie, I'm not sure. I guess I don't do my own recruiting, to be honest, right? I mean, I have bigger projects, so I have a recruiter who handles it for me. I guess you could. Just remember that you're going to get a lot of spam. You're going to get a lot of shit responses. So you just need to figure out a way to filter that out. I can tell you that I recently did it, that I posted on my Facebook. I was trying to look for people who are in the fitness and nutrition industry, and I made the bad mistake of saying paid. And like, I don't know, someone and like, I can tell you there were like somewhere in like, I can't remember, it was Pakistan or Sri Lanka or whatever. And like, because I can see where the questions came, where the people came from, is there must have been a call center, like, right, doing my survey over and over and over and over again. And they have like a gazillion names, you know, but it'll be like Jennifer Strauss, but with only one S. And then like 1, Jennifer Strauss 2, Jennifer Strauss 3 for the email address. So, you know, it's in this day and age, it's hard. William, I'm looking for patterns in the backgrounds of the players that the SME choose. Let's say LeBron are the best. I would look for pattern for like where they went to college. I mean, this doesn't really sound like research, actually. I mean, this doesn't really sound like research. You know, I mean, I would go onto like Upwork or Fiverr. And I mean, you can find some kid in Russia. Well, Russia is probably a bad answer. But like, I would go into Fiverr or to Upwork and find some kid in another country who you can pay $10 an hour to populate that data. And then you can take that data and then upload it into a survey tool. That's what I'm thinking based on what you're saying. I mean, I may not exactly be understanding, but that doesn't sound like research. That sounds like more like data analytics. Do you have 3 qualitative that you, yes. 3 qualitative questions. Zoe from Mars, explain to Zoe from Mars what this is. You know, and it can be like, it doesn't have to be what this is, like, hey, Zoe from Mars has heard about this thing called sports beverages. Tell her, you know, but she's confused. How would she go about shopping for them? Tell her how you go about shopping for sports beverages. What are you looking for? What choices are you making? So Zoe from Mars is almost always one. I like to do something called a life motto. This may be too like strategic, but like, you know, I want you to think about your, you know, if you think about a motto, which is a statement that represents who you are, you know, and what you care about, you know, mottos could be carpe diem, don't worry, be happy, everything in moderation. When you think about yourself as a small business owner, what is your motto? And what does that mean for the companies that you choose to use? Motto is one I use a lot. I'm trying to think of other questions. Hey, anonymous attendee, give me an industry and I'll throw you a question. The data comes from the SMEs. Hey, William, what exactly is an SME? Oh, yeah. I don't know how you're getting information from those guys. I think that you might have subject matter expert. Okay, thank you. How would you go about doing that? Oh, geez, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you're talking to Coach K. What you could do, here's a thought, William, is you could go onto your Facebook and your Instagram and say, hey, I'm looking for 20 sports coaches, you know, little league, all from high school, from little league to high school to college, to answer some questions about stars, and I'll pay you for your time. You know, you just have to qualify those people. The other thing you can do, and this is really hard, but you can also spam people from LinkedIn. No, it's okay, no worries. LinkedIn is another place to find people. And, you know, you also, I mean, sometimes, so what was I doing a project with? So I used to do a lot of work with one of the very large tech companies with search engine marketers. And this is a little tacky, but you could go into sort of a coach's online group and ask the questions and throw a survey down there. Okay, so fitness, so questions across fitness. So the model question would be great about fitness, but I think it's always helpful to ask what brands people are using. And here's another juicy question. What does this brand, so, okay, you say that you're a big fan of Outdoor Voices, or you're a big fan of Peloton. You know, obviously the first obvious kind of boring question is why. Boring, you can ask it if you want. But tell me what Peloton understands about you. You know, what does Peloton get about you? You know, what does Outdoor Voices know about you that maybe Lululemon doesn't? So that would be a juicy way of thinking about it. You know, in terms of wellness, it's always helpful of understanding with when it comes to because you guys are all product people, it's always helpful to understand what people are using today, why, boring. Better question for why is, what is it about this product that appeals to you? What does this product get about you? If you couldn't use this product anymore, what would you use instead? What would you use instead? What would you be missing if you didn't use this product? Hey, I heard that you really like Yogi Tea. Talk to me about what does Yogi Tea get about you? Here's a fun one. If Yogi Tea were a person, what kind of person would it be? Oh, that's really interesting. You mentioned that you feel like Yogi Tea would be someone your age. What about the brand tells you that? So that is the way that you would go about using qualitative questions. So I have about 4 minutes left. What else anything else any other questions that you guys have? You know, it sounds like quantitative can be, you know, so Michaela, food and beverage, I mean, I do a lot of this. You know, I think it depends on what kind of questions you're wanting to answer at where you are. You know, brands that they're using, you know, it's always fun to take, I mean, this gets expensive, but you know, this would be a fun way to do friends of, is like, hey, can you meet me at Trader Joe's? And you have them take you shopping. One of the way I like to set up a shop, it's called a shop along. I always say to people, I want you to imagine that you're shopping for X, Y, and Z, for sparkling water, for cheeses, for healthy options for your family. You know, in the cartoons, how people have like bubbles over their head where you know what they're thinking. I want you to speak those bubbles out. I want you to take me shopping now for how you would go about shopping for your kids. What are you looking for? What are you looking at? What resonates with you? And then let's say that you come across the packaged lentils at Trader Joe's and you were trying to do your own version of packaged lentils. Oh, that's interesting. You know, they didn't see it. Bring them back to the packaged lentils. Hey, have you ever seen this product? Yes or no? You know, talk to me about this product. To what degree does this resonate with you? To what degree does this meet your needs? Don't be afraid to take people again. And especially if it's friends of, you give them a $10 gift card to, you know, say, hey, I mean, you're going to go trade at shopping at Trader Joe's. I'm going to give you a $10 or $25 coupon or gift card if you'd spend 15 minutes with me. Lots of cheap and cheerful ways of doing it. All right. Well, I think that is the end. This is my first one. So I said, okay, great. I think the folks at Startup CPG are going to come back on and wrap this up. But thanks guys for your time and for all of your really, really good questions. You know, obviously, if you have any major questions, you know, feel free to ping me on email. Obviously, I'll do what I can without obviously, you know, going crazy. And, you know, and if you do need some help, I'd be happy to do hourly work. And I do cheap and cheerful work, you know, to help out. Understanding though, that not everybody has ginormous budgets at this stage in your career, but I'm happy to help because I'm a small business owner too.
Thank you, Sarah. That was amazing. Like I learned a lot just
Great.
like here on the back. I love how everybody interact and ask questions. Do you want to just leave? Do you have your email to leave on the screen here?
Oh yeah, that's a really smart question. Really smart thing. Oh, that's the wrong thing.
I can see it's just like a.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm going to do is I will just send it in the chat.
Okay. And then if you want to say out loud too, because on the recording, people don't see the chat. So if someone's listening.
I will, yep. So I am, my name is Sarah Shore. And I'll also put my website in here. So it's Sarah. Actually, did I put my information? Oh, I did.
There you go.
I was all the way ahead of myself. Let me do a share. There we go. So yeah, so it's Sarah Shore, and it's Sarah at 𝐿𝐴𝑟einsights.com, and Shore is SCHOR Insights. And then you see my my email address on there. Feel free to throw something out. Happy to help, happy to talk a little bit more.
I can't see your screen. Can you stop presenting?
You can't see it? I thought I was sharing. Did I do a bad job of that?
No, just now is weird. But if you want to share again, just with like without the whole presentation, just the normal. Yeah, there we go. Now I can see it. Just like that.
Awesome. So there's my information, guys. And do feel free to link in with me.
Yes. So yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. This was amazing. We were going to send the recording and the presentation by tomorrow. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to ask Sarah. And Sarah, this was great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. My pleasure. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, see you guys later.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.